First of all, let me introduce myself. My name's Alex Loisel. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Mundy Cruising. And I'm joined today by Edwina, our owner and managing director. And as we're all here, Edwina, let's jump right in. For those of you who are attending who might be a little unfamiliar with Mundy Cruising, perhaps you'd be able to explain a little bit more of our company and our history.
Yes, delighted. Hi, Alex. Great to be here. So Mundy Cruising has been around now for 51 years, almost to the day. We started on the 1st of October 1970. And I think we were the first cruise-only agency in the whole world. Our premise right from the start was that we were very interested, passionate indeed, about holidays at sea, but also that our preference was for small luxury ships and a very high level of personal service. So whilst a huge amount has changed in the cruise industry since 1970, and certainly through the 90s, and then in this century we've seen a complete transformation with huge ships and a real mass market product. Our interest has always been in small ships, luxury ships, expedition and river, and in looking after our clients just as well as those very special ships do on board when people are actually traveling on board. So that's really our speciality. That's where we stand out. We don't think you can be all things to all people. We know that we are very specific about what we do, and our message is very clear. And our team have an extraordinary amount of knowledge between them. I don't need to tell you, Alex, what a very special team they are. So we all share this overriding passion for very special holidays at sea.
Thank you. And speaking of very special holidays at sea, so you've recently come back from a cruise, your second since cruise lines resumed operation. So could you tell us a little bit about your time on board and actually how it compared to the pre-pandemic cruising experience?
Oh, yes, absolutely. What a treat to be back on board a ship. That's just so special. And I know you have too, Alex. You've also had that special experience. Interestingly, we were flying to Copenhagen. We were going on Oceania's Marina just before that ship resumed service. It was the first of Oceania's ships to resume service. And even we, travel professionals that know everything supposedly about travel, even we were slightly anxious before we actually went. There was just so much to get our heads around in terms of the tests that you have to take, not just what you require to leave the UK, but also what the country you're going to wants, what the shipping line wants, and then the whole business about coming back again, the forms you have to fill in, the tests you have to pre-book. It all seemed terribly, terribly complicated, and I had a real insight into why people have become so anxious about travel. But in fact, it is just a question of sitting down and going through the process very methodically, writing everything down so you know what you've got. And we did test before we travelled, although it wasn't required, but we did. We had our COVID passports on our phones and printed out. We set forth and flew with quite a long queue at Heathrow with British Airways because they were checking absolutely everything, so you couldn't do online check-in. But that all went very, very smoothly. The flight was fine. On arrival, we were waved through because, of course, all our paperwork had been checked before we got there. We arrived at the port. They did a test right there on the spot. We sat there for about 15 minutes waiting for the test results to come through. They came up on a screen. We were approved, and then go back through the normal embarkation procedures and on board in no time, really. Actually, within probably 45 minutes of arriving at the port, we were on board the ship. So once on board, the requirement was to wear masks when you were moving about. So when you were moving about the ship. Actually, in our suite, there was a little gift pack which included you know, hand sanitizer, but also a very lovely Oceania mask. So we were out and about wearing our beautiful Oceania masks. But once you arrive in a bar or in a restaurant and sit down, then you don't have to wear the mask anymore. You can take it off. They were all set up for social distancing, so there weren't too many people sitting in any one sort of conversation space at any one time. And it was absolutely straightforward. So the whole procedure, very, very easy. We were used to it more or less immediately. And then when we were returning home, so the day before we disembarked, it was actually a requirement of the Danish government as well as for us to do a test on board. So they did the test on board. That was, we had an email through within an hour telling us that was fine. We filled in our forms on our phones. Very complicated, what a hassle, but that's fine, it was done. Showed that at the airport and straight through and back. So very, very straightforward. Just a bit of a worry initially. Now the rules have actually become less stringent since then. Things are improving. How about you, Alex? What was your experience when you were?
So, I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, yes, there was that extra administrative burden, you know, before and after with the tests. But my first trip was from the UK, and it was a UK 2 nights UK round trip, and I love being back on board. It was a joy to step on board and just to be welcomed by a line of crew, all immaculately dressed with a glass of champagne. And actually, as soon as I stepped foot back on board, I sort of remembered how much I enjoyed cruising, and it was just, yeah, fabulous. And then very quickly got into the habit of having a mask with me to wear on my way, you know, to and from a lounge or a restaurant. But you know, it was nice, you know, that the mask requirement isn't necessary when you're sat drinking or eating. And you know, both my trips I've been able to join other tables and eat with other people, so it wasn't as if I was restricted. So I kind of very quickly got in, you know, into the routine of it, and actually that routine of it isn't too much different from what I'm used to in my regular day-to-day life. You know, I've been used to having to pop a mask on for the shop or for the train. So actually it was just a lovely experience. And actually I had a similar thing in my stateroom. There was a little pack of masks and hand sanitizer, a little COVID safety pack. I've had 2 trips. Both have required slightly different testing requirements. One was done by the cruise line, one had to be done by me prior. But yes, having my paperwork saved to my phone and printed out, so I wasn't sort of struggling to find an email when the time was needed was helpful. But yeah, great. And actually it was a fantastic welcome from the crew. One of the things that really stood out for me was just
very emotional.
They were to have me and the other guests back on board. And actually we've heard similar, haven't we, Edwina, from some of our guests?
Yes, so the majority of our clients who've travelled over the summer have been going on, for example, Silver Sea and Seabourn out of Athens on those wonderful Greek round island cruises. A little bit of Hebridean out of the UK, some river cruising, of course, and really the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So as we've highlighted, quite a little bit of anxiety prior to going, but once people have done it once, actually some of them you just can't stop them going again and again. We've got clients who've been back on back-to-back cruises 2, 3, 4 times because the excitement of being back on board and in that wonderful environment and remembering everything they loved so much has been so great for them. So that's really been very, very positive. And I think you've been speaking to quite a number of clients, haven't you, that have been back and talked about their own experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that struck me was just how like normal the feedback was. I spoke to one guest who was on one of the first sailings to resume. It's a UK round trip, and when I asked about the experience, I was sort of expecting it to be for us to be talking about masks and social distancing, and immediately, actually, what I got was a fantastic review of the cruise line, as if COVID wasn't even a thing. You know, the cruise director wasn't to their tastes, didn't find their jokes particularly funny, but the cruise experience was fantastic. The food was as good as they remembered. The wine was great. You know, the crew was so happy to see them, and actually it was very much like normal times. And we spoke at length, and I really had to quiz them on. It was two couples were traveling together. I really had to quiz them on what was different about, you know, about this cruise compared to past, and they're both extensive cruises. And actually the things that we kind of the things that did impact their cruise and their experience that were different was a lot of it was around the shore excursions. And this was, as I said, very early on in the cruise resumption, and they were doing an ex-UK trip, but they had to remain within the cruise bubble. So they were on cruise line excursions when traveling around, and as particularly independent people who'd like to, when they're away, when they're abroad in past cruises, liked to get on public transport to do their own thing, would not often tap into the cruise lines excursions. They did find that slightly restrictive. I think even more so because they were traveling around the UK, and actually, should they have chosen to travel around the UK by car, they could have gone anywhere they pleased. But because the government restrictions were so cautious, and the cruise lines were being, you know, so protective of their clients, actually they asked them to remain in their own bubble, and they did find that slightly restrictive. And interestingly, we were talking about them rebooking because they had such a good time. They were looking at Europe, and actually what we've seen is the cruise lines that operated a Greek Islands program this year started off with their clients having to stay within the cruise lines bubble, so on their own excursions. But as local restrictions have eased, as vaccinations rates have increased in various countries, actually what we're seeing is those restrictions drop away and people being able to explore shore independently again. But yeah, their experience was fabulous, and the things that had changed, actually some of them were for the better. They had no objection to the buffet being served to them.
No.
I think
how
people
perfect is that?
The staff were wearing masks, but you know that didn't hide how pleased they were to see guests on board. And you know, and what I loved was when I said, you know, was there a communication problem? You know, the response was, well, a little, but we just got on with it. And you know, that just sort of struck me as a very British attitude. So I mean, they had a fabulous time, and we've had similar feedback from others. It's been you know, it's been lovely to hear.
Yeah.
But the cruise lines have done so much, and they've implemented so many changes, and that's been fantastic to see.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when you were talking earlier about the caution of keeping people in bubbles when they're getting out of the UK, that's really been the approach, hasn't it, from the cruise lines? They're working with an abundance of caution to ensure complete safety for their clients. And why would they wish for anything else? Really, what they've done has been exemplary. I mean, the cruise lines, and I've spoken about it a lot within Cruise News, we've spoken to our clients about it a lot, but their behaviour has been absolutely exemplary. Right from the start, they put together this committee of experts from outside of the cruise industry, public health experts, who were on a committee together working out the very best and safest ways for the various cruise lines to resume service. And of course, whilst these cruise lines are extreme competitors in normal circumstances, when it came to addressing this challenge during the pandemic. The collaboration was absolutely extraordinary. They worked so closely together. They were supported by CLIA, of course, the Cruise Lines International Association, and then within the UK they were working very closely with the Department for Transport, the Chamber of Shipping, so many different organisations involved. And then as they got closer to resumption, then there are so many other moving parts you need to prepare for. So what was happening at the ports, what was happening with the local agents, what was happening with tourist boards overseas. So it was just a huge thing to do, and what they achieved was really said it all about the cruise industry, which is used to doing that very multi-strand planning and organisation. It was a real recognition of what the cruise industry is so very good at. And when you look around at other places where people join together, where you get big numbers of people, so for example in resorts, in Las Vegas maybe, shopping malls, amusement parks, all of those things that were having the same challenges, but with staff who are going home at night, who knows where, associating with people who may or may not have been vaccinated. The comparison of the safety levels from the cruise industry against anywhere else you might go is absolutely extraordinary. And I think we'll see that as time goes forward, that people now, you know, initially we thought, oh well, when cruising resumes it's going to be quite difficult, and we'll get people that know all about cruises coming, but getting new to cruise will be will be quite difficult. But in fact what we've seen is people will recognize this very high level of cleanliness and safety, these great protocols, a real thought through process. And so you're seeing a lot of people that formerly maybe wouldn't have considered a cruise coming back now. And of course for us, that's particularly evident when you're looking at smaller ships that already have social distancing effectively built into the whole structure. And we're getting a really positive and high take up for the future.
It's been great to see, and I think the cruise lines were fantastic in they both took their time and leapt into new protocols. You know, they voluntarily paused. They didn't rush into a resumption, but they were working so hard behind the scenes throughout that period to make sure that actually when they did resume, they resumed so well. And their planning has been absolutely fantastic. And I think that that's often missed actually. And sometimes the cruise industry aren't as good as they perhaps could be, I think, when it comes to publicising the amount of work that has gone into it. And actually they are continually doing huge amounts of work, aren't they? Planning for the future has always been, you know, part and parcel of what they do. And actually we've seen some really exciting things recently as cruise lines adapt to what the future might bring. And Edwina, you know, as well as the COVID stuff, what else have cruise lines been doing, you know, to look to the future and adapt?
Well, so the thing that we'd been very aware of prior to the pandemic was this huge increase in expedition ships. So there was a really high number of new expedition ships being built, and we had our doubts about it. So that, you know, is the market ready for this number of ships? But in fact it really does again match the mood, the zeitgeist, if you like. So what we've got is ships that rather seamlessly combine the whole adventurousness of traveling a little bit off the beaten track, further away, with really high levels of service delivery and luxury, which is really playing to the desires of, or what we're seeing as the desires of our clients. So people are now looking at their bucket lists and have stopped thinking I can do that anytime. They're very much more focused on, you know, if that's something you really want to do, then go on and do it now. Treat yourself. You've got a little bit of money saved because you haven't been traveling during the pandemic, but also, you know, what the pandemic has done is made it become clear that you can't just trot off and do any little thing you like anytime. So that's the first thing, is that you can go to places you've always had on your list, and also to places that are away from the crowd. So you're not in this sort of crowded, busy, touristified environment. You're going out and seeing nature and seeing wilderness, seeing wildlife, some wonderful stuff there. So that's been great, seeing those new luxury expedition ships. But the other thing we've seen is actually also a lot of new luxury companies, even ones coming into service new. So we've got Ritz-Carlton, long delayed, but we expect their first ship to launch in 2022. We've got the completely new Explorer Voyages, which is a really exciting new product, larger ship, but with a real luxury yacht experience on board. And you've got an expansion of the existing fleets that we know and love. So that's really interesting too. And what we've also seen alongside that is a real focus on cutting edge technology and sustainability. So that's become, there's been a bit of a tipping point over the course of the pandemic. And cruise lines are very focused on how that's going to be. Now, in fact, the truth is they were already. There was a huge amount of work going on in the maritime industry, not just the cruise lines, but the shipyards, the parts builders and so on. So really working towards a new and sustainable future. And now I think we'll see the cruise lines talking about that more and more, and how exciting that is, the possibility of new fuels, of hybrid technology, battery powered, sail powered, so much going on, and that's something that we find really fascinating, and we'll talk about a lot more within our own communications. So that's been great. The other thing that we see a lot of course, and that was big growth prior to the pandemic, is river. So I don't think we should forget river and how great that is. A wonderful opportunity to go and tour Europe with very close-up exploration, as well as some very exciting long-haul stuff such as the Amazon, the Upper Amazon, maybe the Far East when that opens up again, the Mekong, for example, but also the Nile. We've seen a lot more vessels on the Nile, some new ones just coming into service right now, and then some new destinations opening up altogether. So, for example, Amman Waterways are talking about Colombia in a couple of years. So that's always an exciting product. And then the other thing that's really important that we've seen that our clients are really recognizing is longer itineraries. So people are getting a little more anxious about the whole process of travel, what we were talking about earlier, you know, going through the airports, the forms, the tests and so on. So if you're going to do it, you might as well really make it work for you. So people traveling, picking to much longer itineraries for maybe, you know, 20, 30 days, 40 days. We're selling World Cruise right through to 2024 at the moment. It's absolutely extraordinary. So then, of course, the other thing we haven't spoken about, and it sort of plays into both adventure and sustainability, is this whole question of citizen science and the opportunities that the cruise lines are giving to let their customers become a part of the scientific work that those ships are doing in terms of, you know, counting whales or observing changes in ice flow patterns and so forth. Absolutely fascinating. And also it means that everybody that's gone on those ships is coming home as an ambassador and talking about that more widely. So very interesting.
So actually I was lucky enough to be on board Ponant's newly launched Le Commandant Charcot, and actually that they said exactly that. They want people to go away, they want people to be an advocate for those destinations, because as they put it, you know, people will protect what they know, and actually to help, you know, to help people do that is a core part of what they are looking at doing. And actually the level of scientific support that they provide is really quite outstanding. You know, it's they understand that the Arctic is a very under-researched area, because, you know, it's incredibly difficult to get to, it's incredibly expensive to get to, and actually they invite not only their guests on board to participate in some of the science, but they will invite academics and scientists to board the vessel so that they can do additional research, so that they can further our understanding of the effect of global warming in those areas, which is just extraordinary when they really don't have to. You know, this is all stuff they are doing, you know, because they understand that actually these areas do need to be protected. And I have to say I was very impressed, and that ship in itself is an example of what you were talking about, Edwina, where there's a huge amount of development has gone into the fuel. It's an LNG electric hybrid. You know, they have electric engines. It's a huge amount of research has gone into every detail of it. You know, the engine heat is sent off around the ship to heat everything else. They've got batteries that they've thought carefully about how to keep how to extend the life of the batteries, not just having batteries, but also how to make them last longer. So they're the most environmentally friendly batteries they've got. I mean, it was quite extraordinary to be on board, and to hear.
Very jealous of you on that one, Alex.
But they are an example, aren't they? Others have been doing research, or partnering with other companies that have been doing research as well. So it's great to see the developments that are going on. And in the short term, Edwina, what are our cruise line partners doing to attract new and existing guests back to them?
Yes, well, they've done quite a lot actually with itineraries. So what we've seen, of course, and our clients will have seen, is time again, things being cancelled, rebooked, a new itinerary out there that doesn't happen. So, but now we are really opening up again, and there are certain destinations we know we can go to. Then what we've seen from the cruise lines is that they've worked very proactively to create close-in itineraries that our clients really want to go on. So, for example, Seabourn have got a new program in the Canary Islands starting just after the new year, which we think is going to be just great. And with some good booking incentives too for that short-term business, which is really the opportunity for people to go and you know, test it out, work out if the procedures are as they expect, if they can travel easily, and to give them the confidence to book. And what we're seeing, of course, is a lot booking further out. So this is how to bring people in closer in. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it has been fantastic to see those programs restart. So, you know, if you have had those successful Greek Islands programs, and they've you know, had great customer feedback, and actually what they've done, is with their restart, where they had their plans, actually the likes of Seabourn have then introduced a slightly earlier restart on the basis that they've seen such success. So those Canary Islands, I think, will be fantastic in February and March. We've got some fantastic Caribbean sailings where ships have relocated to, and actually the Caribbean opened up last year, so to a degree, and actually that looks really exciting now, tempting people onto some winter sun. It's quite, I think the itinerary changes that we've seen in terms of maybe getting away from some more populated areas are quite interesting. So Ponant last summer introduced a fantastic program around France. It was for the French market predominantly, as we weren't traveling at the time, but actually some of those sailings were so popular that they've remained, and they're being repeated next spring. So they've got some fantastic Nice round trips that take a really in-depth look at Corsica, and actually that itinerary planning has effort that went into that itinerary planning, you know, in the heart of the pandemic has actually paid dividends now with some really creative itineraries that are out there. And a lot of the cruise lines still have a confidence or additional flexibility program in place as well, which is great. Now, that was introduced a while ago, and all of those have been kind of extended a little bit and extended a little bit and extended a little bit, and they will come to an end soon. But many have something in place for the winter where it's possible to change for a refund or for a future cruise credit for 30 days out, 15 days out, perhaps with some. So actually, there is an understanding that that people are still cautious and that travel is still a little more uncertain than compared to normal times, and actually their policies have adapted to make allowances for that, as well as being pretty generous in terms of if somebody were to contract COVID or be contacted, then actually they are allowed to cancel or change without any penalties. Now obviously it's slightly different for each cruise line, but actually that's something that we can advise on, and we have all those policies to hand. So it's great to see the cruise lines helping people have confidence in booking. And that's
right. But as you say, Alex, it's become very complicated. So with all the complications of what the confidence policy is, how to work it, if you need to change your plans, changing your flight arrangements, preparing for all the testing and so forth. And I think that's really where Mundy Cruising comes into its own, because our job is to make that really as straightforward as possible. And in fact, we often know the procedures better than the cruise lines themselves. They've had so many changes, and we are actually acting on them and dealing with them day to day. So our team are absolutely spot on there. I don't think there's ever been a time where using a really professional agent has been more essential.
Couldn't agree more. So we've got a little bit of time left for some of the questions that we had in. So Edwina, I'll fire away if I may. So the first one, we know that masks are not universally loved. So first question is, how long do you think masks will be required on board?
How long is a piece of string? It's going to be it's similar to what happens on land, isn't it? I heard on board Oceania that because masks are not required in the US, then actually when Oceania is cruising out of the US, they won't require masks on board. So that's quite interesting. So often it will depend on the regulations of the places that you're traveling in. But I think actually the core message is it's all about client safety and crew safety. That's the 100% commitment of the cruise lines. So I would say that masks will be used as long as it's important for the health of the people on board. That simple.
And will there be any good deals coming out? And when is the best time to book? Always a difficult question, that. But when's the best time to book?
Well, the best time to book is now, because actually the availability is pretty tight. So there was always all this talk, wasn't there, about pent-up demand, and we sort of took that with a pinch of salt. We weren't absolutely sure about that. We knew that people would be cautious to come back, but a lot of people who were cancelled in 20 and early 21 have rebooked for the future. So we're certainly seeing that capacity in 2022 is much lower than it would normally be at this time of year. So if you want to go ahead, book it now, because frankly the prices are not going to go down. If whatever happens, they're going to go up. So that's really the message. I was looking at World Cruise earlier. Some of those prices are absolutely amazing when you look at the per day rates. Just go out there, grab it now, work out what you want to do, plan to enjoy yourself, go for the positive feeling that comes from having something booked and something to look forward to. So yeah, that's definitely my premise. Book now. And then as for pricing, short in, as we were talking about earlier, there's some good value. It's not going to be cheap. The ships are not traveling at 100% occupancy at the moment. There's only so much that they give really to the cruise lines. So yeah, it's still fantastic value.
So next question, what happens if there's a case on board?
Oh, well, that does happen. It's been interesting, hasn't it, that there's not really been much sort of splurge about it, media splurge, and you sort of expected it because, you know, there's nothing the media likes better than a bit of a disaster. So the fact that there have been cases on board, but there really hasn't been much spoken about it, is a great tribute to the way that that's handled. So basically, the testing, as we said, is consistent. So you're testing before you get on board. If you test positive before you get on board, you will not be allowed on board, obviously. The cruise line will assist you, but you really need to have insurance to cover you and to make sure that you're going to be looked after if you need to go and quarantine in a hotel. So then if there's an infection found once on the ship, so the ship has quarantine cabins, so they will isolate someone immediately, then they will check who they've been in close contact with, and they will test everybody. And whilst they're doing that testing, then they will isolate those people who are being tested as well. So they'll be checking to see whether the infection has spread in any way. As soon as the quarantined, the infected people, as soon as you get into a port, they are going to be disembarked. This isn't any different actually from what always happened. If you were ill on board, then the cruise line would look after you and treat you, but they would get you off the ship as soon as possible to put you into a safer medical environment. So you will be disembarked. Again, the cruise lines will help you. Your insurance will kick in, and whether you have to isolate, quarantine, the way you come back, that will depend on the regulations of the country. But what's been very interesting has been that infections have been picked up on ships very quickly, and we haven't seen anything spreading. So we haven't seen any of those high-level infections that we were seeing really before we knew what the pandemic was all about. So yeah, I think it's been working really smoothly. We've had Kathy on board last week where there was an infection. Yeah. She said it was really not at all disruptive, and everyone was very happy with how things were dealt with.
Yep. Yeah, it was reassuring to hear that it didn't really impact on her experience of the cruise too much. There was a kind of a reminder to wear masks, and shows in the theatre were cancelled, but there was still kind of, you know, some entertainment on deck, and everyone else went about their normal days. So it was dealt with incredibly well.
Yep. Very reassuring.
And then finally, when's your next cruise?
Oh, it's not long now. I'm so excited. Yes, we're going at the end of November on one of our favourites. So we do have a history of going to the Caribbean in November to spend a blissful week on Sea Dream, and that will be our first holiday cruise since February 2020. Can't wait.
And February 2020 wasn't that well timed.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I was seizing the day, Alex, and that's what I say people have to do. You know, when you can go.
Well, I think that's great advice, and actually that's a fantastic note to finish on. So thank you very much, Edwina, for your time. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. It's been lovely speaking to you, and yeah, and if you need any information from us about anything at all that we've spoken about, or anything else for that matter, then please do get in touch. We're here to answer your questions and help. Okay, thank you very much and goodbye.
Goodbye.